This is Paving the Way to March Madness, presented by Nicolac. All right, the women's basketball season is over. South Carolina completes an undefeated season, knocking off Caitlyn Clark and Iowa 87-75 in the national championship game on Sunday in Cleveland. Let's break it down and recap it all with women's basketball insider and analyst, the one and only Christina Williams, joins me now. Christina, did you enjoy this national championship game? Because I thought it was a pretty good one.
It was a pretty good game. I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely enjoyed it. So let's get into it because, Christina, we saw Iowa and Caitlyn Clark get off to a scorching start. Caitlyn Clark, 18 points in the first quarter, but then she cooled off. Clark shot 5 for 20 after that first quarter. So the question here is, what did South Carolina do to slow down Clark after that first quarter where they trailed by 7 at the end of one and then turned things around in this game? What did South Carolina do differently after that first quarter?
I mean, they changed the defensive schemes with Clark. You saw them throwing Bree Hall, Raven Johnson. I think that Raven Johnson was the difference maker defensively when she was put on Clark in that second quarter, especially. I think Clark went 1 for 5 in that second quarter. And so Raven Johnson, she was face guarding. She was picking up Clark from 94 feet. She was fighting over screens. She did everything that she needed to do when it came to that defensive assignment. She said that this was the final stop on her revenge tour, and she definitely pulled off that assignment tonight against Caitlyn Clark.
She absolutely did that. I don't know why, but I always like when somebody's on a revenge tour. I don't know. It makes me happy. I like the people they have a mission. They're just checking off names like Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. But anyway, in these big games, you and I have talked about X factors. We talked about this in the preview for this game, and sometimes unexpected heroes, right, Christina? And Tess Johnson, boy, she was that X factor for the Gamecocks in the national championship game. What was your assessment of the freshman guard's performance off the bench in, I would assume, what is the biggest game of her career, and how much does it matter that Dawn Staley trusted her in this spot in the championship game?
Absolutely. Well, Tessa Johnson and Mylacia Fulwale, they stepped up on the biggest stage today to help their team win. That bench had 37 points for South Carolina tonight. And Tessa Johnson, she was 50% from the three-point line. Last year, when South Carolina was eliminated in the Final Four, three-point shooting wasn't their strength. And what did Dawn Staley go out and do? She went and recruited and got players who can shoot from the outside, and that was the difference maker in this game today against Iowa. Tessa Johnson played like an upperclassman. This stage did not scare her at all. She did what she needed to do. She got it done on both ends of the floor. And then Mylacia Fulwale was able to help as well as a freshman, just control the pace and get that offense going for South Carolina. When they were down 10-0 and they inserted Mylacia Fulwale, that's what helped get the pace going for this South Carolina team.
Yeah, it really did. Tessa Johnson, amazing in this game. Just a tremendous performance by the freshman in this one. Another tremendous performance was by Kamilla Cardoso. Double-double in this contest, 15 points, 17 boards, and 3 blocks. Here's a question for me. Was she the best player on the floor in the national championship game?
She was, and she won the Most Outstanding Player award as well. She was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and we know defense wins championships. Kamilla Cardoso got it done on both ends of the floor for South Carolina. I said yesterday that rebounding was going to be that key stat to determine who would win this game, and South Carolina out-rebounded Iowa 51-29, and Kamilla Cardoso was a huge part of that. And so she did what she needed to do, and I feel like she even upped her draft stock. The WNBA draft is on April 15th, and a lot of people are saying they can see Kamilla Cardoso go at number 2.
Going at number 2. I've seen a lot of mock drafts where she's projected to go 4th, but she's had herself a tremendous tournament. You talk about her having a tremendous year as SEC Defensive Player of the Year. So, yeah, she might have upped that stock for sure. Let's talk about Caitlyn Clark a little bit here because she doesn't win a title in her final game of her collegiate career. There's going to be talk to evaluate what Clark can be at the next level, and we can get to that at some point in the WNBA. But what do you think the Iowa guard, her legacy is in women's college basketball?
Well, you know, although she came up short 2 years in a row for the national title, I think that Caitlyn Clark, you know, she lived up to the moment. There was a lot of pressure on her to win, but she went out there, she played her game. There was more eyes on women's basketball this year, breaking record numbers in viewership, Caitlyn Clark has become a household name. And so, she's going to go down as one of the greatest college basketball players in history. Of course, we can't take anything from her because she did not finish the job. She did not win a national title, but she's still a great player. And I love that Dawn Staley gave her props on that biggest stage and shared the spotlight and giving Caitlyn Clark her props of just having an amazing college career. Lots to look forward to as she transitions now into the WNBA.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot to look forward to with her, for sure. Tremendous run for Caitlyn Clark in an Iowa Hawkeyes uniform. You mentioned Dawn Staley there. She wins her third national championship as the head coach of the Gamecocks. Her team became the fifth program to win 3 titles, and they just completed an undefeated season. Obviously not easy to do. Should we be talking about Dawn Staley as one of the great coaches, not just in women's college basketball, but one of the best coaches in sports, period?
Absolutely. I mean, Dawn Staley was someone who got it done as a player, but now as a coach, you see her just arriving. You can put her in that conversation with the Pat Summers, the Gino Ariamas, the Tara Vanderveers. She's doing such an amazing job at turning that South Carolina program over, but also you see that legacy live on when her players go into the WNBA. Dawn Staley is absolutely one of the greatest coaches in sports, period. And I think that tonight definitely solidified that, because when people were counting her out, she was able to get things done. She lost 5 of her starters last year, 4 who went on into the WNBA, and was still able to have an undefeated season and get the win. And so major props to Dawn Staley for getting the job done.
Yeah, you got to give props to that. Losing 5 of your starters, coming back and not losing a game with a whole new roster, basically. Really impressive, for sure. Now, Christina, last year after the national championship game, you and I, we talked about the state of women's basketball in this country. Following this year's women's tournament, one, what did you think of the competition in the tournament, and do you like where the sport is right now as compared to when we talked about this last year?
When we talk about growing the game of women's basketball, it cannot be said how much parity in the game and competition is important for that growth. And I think that we see that happening now, especially at the college level, just how talented these athletes are, and then their transition into the next stage. So women's college basketball is in a really great spot right now. Like we said, we saw the record viewership numbers go up this year in the NCAA tournament, and I think that is only up from here. We have more stars coming in next year, but also you have Juju Watkins, Hannah Hidalgo. You have so many stars that are the future of this sport that are returning next year. And I think that you have to continue to build on that momentum.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I think the game will do that. We've seen that happening. This is the end of a college basketball season on the women's side. For Christina and myself, you know what that shifts off to now. It's on to the WNBA. We got the WNBA draft coming up on the 15th. Then before you know it, it's training camp. So women's basketball never stops. Christina Williams, one of the best insiders and analysts, always on top of it. Christina, I appreciate your time, all your insight, analysis throughout this tournament. And we'll be doing a lot more around women's basketball. So thank you.
Thank you, Dexter.